Hey listeners, make sure to check out our 2-week free trial for unlimited yoga, breathwork, and Ayurveda on betteryoga.net.
Hello and welcome to the Better Yoga Podcast. My name is Tiger Bai, and I am delighted to have with us Chuck McGee III today.
Hello. Good day.
I'll give you a little bit of background about my friend and colleague Chuck. Chuck is a type 1 diabetic and traumatic brain injury survivor and has faced a lot of personal health challenges. And so for years was searching for a practical and impactful way to improve his health. And then in 2017 was reintroduced to breathwork after feeling the benefits as well as the massive shift this brought to his life. He switched professions and decided to dedicate his life helping others to discover their own personal power to help themselves. And since then, he's traveled worldwide studying different breathwork modalities, being introduced to conscious breathwork through the Wim Hof Method, which included weeks of instruction from the man himself. He was actually the first American instructor to help lead the Wim Hof winter expeditions in Poland. And he continues to expand his knowledge in this and other breathwork modalities, including the Oxygen Advantage, which we are both master instructors for. And now, for more than half a decade, he's been working in a healthcare setting, applying foundational and functional breathing, coupled with specific breathwork protocols to help reduce chronic pain, anxiety, and depression.
Mm-hmm.
What a impressive resume.
It sounds impressive, but you gotta, if you want to get better at anything, you gotta go into the trenches and practice. And
Absolutely.
I have been fortunate that I have been given the opportunity to practice a lot, whether it's on my own health problems or other people's.
And speaking of practice, the question we ask all our guests right off the bat is, what does your practice look like these days?
I don't have a in-stone practice, because if I do that, I'm not really listening to how my body's talking to me that morning. So I will do breath work, but the modality is up to how I'm feeling, what state I'd like to be in for the rest of the day or for a part of the day. I'm going to do cold exposure at some point in the day. And at 5 points throughout the day, I have an alarm on my phone that goes off and I check in with my posture and my breath. But other than that, I leave it vague so that I'm not stuck to this dogmatic practice that I begin to resent because it's just rote and repetition. So I like to leave it open.
I think it's great to have an intuitive approach to a practice because at first, when you're a beginner at something, you need the structure. You need somebody else's recipe protocols to step your foot in the door and see what you like and what you don't like. But at this point, you being so learned in breath work and other modalities, your body knows what it needs and you're smart enough to listen.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to say that like I have, if I'm not sure or I'm cloudy, I'm probably going to do the Wim Hof method. And then when I'm done with that, I'm probably going to practice light, low, slow, deep breathing for the rest of the day. Because whereas all of these other breathwork protocols are like the gym for your breath, and Oxygen Advantage does have a lot of exercises we can do, it's more a lifestyle choice. When I'm not doing these breathwork protocols, I'm going to be breathing nasally, inhale and exhale, going for the proper movement within my body and creating that foundation so I can succeed throughout the day. But to tell people, well, this is the best breathwork for this, or this is the best breathwork for that. My standing statement is whatever breathwork you can remember in the moment is the best breathwork for whatever you're dealing with.
And a lot of the breath work that's instructed from various academies and schools of breath work is based on natural instinctual responses. For example, the physiological sigh, this is mimicking something the body does automatically to inflate the alveoli, a little sniff and a slow exhale, now applied more strategically to treat stress or anxiety, but definitely based on something the body already intuitively knows how to do.
We just forget these things.
Yes. It is
And
literally the art of remembering yourself.
mm-hmm. And giving yourself the grace to get it wrong. Like, well, what if it doesn't work? Try something else. Because not everything works every time. I wish you could say, yeah, in 4, out 6. That's a nice parasympathetic breath. Anytime you're stressed, in 4, out 6 will calm you down. Except the times it won't. And then it'll piss you off. And you'll have no idea why it did that this time. You just have to switch to something else. Which is why I don't depend on one specific protocol. It's got to be many, many, many.
Totally. So I'd love for our listeners to get a little bit more of a sense for your personal journey. And so as a type 1 diabetic and a traumatic brain injury survivor, how have these experiences shaped your approach to breathwork and even influenced your teaching method?
Well, I didn't realize that because of the profession I had before I was in breathwork, I was an audio engineer and a bartender. It wasn't ever brought up that multiple concussions could have a negative impact. I mean, I wasn't in sports. I did get into altercations because drunk people don't like to be told no, but I wasn't even aware that I was being affected by these brain injuries, and they were changing my personality until I had a really, really bad one and was like, oh, this has been affecting me for years. And the biggest brain injury was after I'd become a breathwork instructor, but to give me just a little more influence over my body, to understand that my brain is a dirty, dirty liar, and that at times I can't trust what it's perceiving. I have to ask people, hey, what's going on? Am I really seeing this right now? And to have just that quarter-second cushion that I think breath work and body work gives me, and knowing it's only about a quarter second, even at the best, to feel that stimulus, and can I relax into it long enough to stay flexible and make the right choice? And before, it seemed I was just reacting to the stimulus instantly. Someone would do something untoward to someone else at the bar, and I'd have to intercede, or my blood sugar would crash, and I'd have to quickly do something about it. And I'd be freaked out, I'd be stressed out, I'd be in an anxious state, and I just wasn't helping any of these situations. But by practicing cold exposure daily and stepping into an uncomfortable stress and calming my breath down, practicing breath work that puts me in an advanced state and calming down, has given me the tools to notice when I'm in those upregulated states and to be able to pump the brakes a little bit, whether that's the intentional sigh or some of Patrick's exercises are my favorite when I'm feeling really stressed. Breathe light's my go-to. Just slow it down and lengthen the exhale as long as I can. Get a little more oxygen in the brain.
Yeah, I think something the Oxygen Advantage does really well is teaching functional baseline breathing that once learned and practiced, you can layer anything on top of it and it holds up. It is just a fundamental learning, and I'm so excited that more of that education is coming to us here in the US.
Well, I would describe OA as a foundational knowledge. A lot of these other practices are not foundational. They're supposed to be built upon a strong foundation. So when people come to me and they're like, I've been doing this crazy fast hyperventilation method, I'm like, okay, how do you breathe the rest of the day? maybe not like that. Let's get the lateral movement of your lower and upper ribs. Let's adjust your posture. Now that that's fixed, now that the foundation's strong, we can add anything on top of it. And that's OA, I think, does that better than almost anybody else on the planet.
Absolutely. And it really echoes the ancient knowledge that yogis have been teaching for millennia. A pranayama practice is meant to sit on such a foundation, more exciting techniques, Kapalabhati, Bhastrika, the Viloma breath. These are all level 2. These are after you have mastered being able to breathe lightly, slowly, deeply through the nose. And something that I don't think is taught enough, not just in breathwork trainings, but yoga teacher trainings, and something I am very passionate about imbuing in all of my classes. For sure. Now, you mentioned a few experiences where you started to notice the injuries you've had changing your personality, or instances where you can feel the physiological effects of your blood sugar crashing.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say you have a pivotal moment or realization that led you to dedicate your life to teaching breathing? Is there a moment you can remember?
Absolutely. That was right at the beginning when I wanted to make the big shift. I was on blood pressure medication. I was taking 800 milligrams of ibuprofen 3 times a day to deal with the chronic pain. Yeah, it was totally healthy, totally subsisting, and it was awesome. I was a peach to be around.
Kari's gonna cringe when she hears this.
And so I start practicing the Wim Hof method, and within 3 months, I'm not taking blood pressure medication anymore. Within 4 months, I'm taking ibuprofen maybe once a week. Now I take ibuprofen maybe once a month. So it's not that the chronic pain is gone completely. It's just not so overwhelming. I've got tools to help manage it. I'm breathing correctly, so I'm getting better oxygenation to my tissues. I'm not standing in a poor posture because it hurts all the time and restricting my respiration, raising my blood pressure and heart rate. But the oh man, I've got to do this for a living moment came when I did it the first time watching the Vice documentary with Wim. And after getting off work, I wouldn't be able to go to bed until 6 or 7 in the morning. We're done at 3 after cleaning everything up, maybe 3:30. I do his breath work and I'm out. And people say they sleep like a baby, but I've had 3 kids and I don't wake up every 2 hours pissed off and hungry. I slept like the dead and I was out cold. Woke up feeling great in the morning. The pain was less. And the more I focused on it and worked towards it, the less I perceived. So that aha moment was like, wait, I don't have to react. I can influence this. And then I did what everyone does who's in our profession is I got on my soapbox and was like, we all need to breathe better. And I got received as well as people would expect. You're crazy. And I said, I'm going to make this my job. This is all I'm going to do. And they were like, you're even crazier. That's ridiculous. No one is going to want breath work. And I was like, I think you're wrong. And I love this
on them.
job. Joke's on them.
100 people show up to be with you every Sunday and Monday from around the world. It's amazing and inspiring. Okay, so you started with the Wim Hof Method, and we were just talking about how practices like those as part of the Oxygen Advantage method, more foundational, light, slow, deep, everyday breathing, do a lot to enhance the effects and understanding of practices like Wim Hof or, bigger breathwork practices. So tell me about what happened when you started to apply the OA to your practice as well. How did your breathwork and specifically your relationship with the Wim Hof method change after that?
Well, I feel very fortunate. Since I was 12, I've been trained in theater, how to breathe correctly to project on stage, how the body is supposed to move. And I was taught at a very young age that every emotion has a breath. And it didn't take me until 20 years after I learned that lesson to realize I can use that off stage as well. And that my breath may be leading me into emotional states. So I had a different foundational application than most, and I was very grateful for that. And when I started really diving into OA around late 2019, early 2020, I was like, this echoes with a lot of the theater stuff I've learned. And I was like, oh, I don't have to be on stage or in a theater setting to use these tools I've got. The OA is just so much more a foundational structure. The science and all of the studies Patrick has got just reinforce all of it. So for the 23 hours and 40 minutes a day, I wasn't doing the Wim Hof Method protocol. I was doing OA. So it gave me something to do and work on for the rest of the day. And it just deepened my understanding of it. It was so much more interesting to work on the subtleties, to relax the body, to take the breath in and out through the nose, and not just at the nostrils so they flare and bring in stress, but keeping the neck relaxed, keeping the tongue in proper posture, breathing through the top part of your nose, nice and slow, getting the body to expand and working on that minutia, realizing that that's where I'm going to see the biggest ingress into relieving chronic pain. Is I can give you like the intentional sigh, I love it, but that doesn't help reduce the symptoms of what caused you to need that stress release. I can calm myself down with the intentional sigh, but that doesn't stop whatever stimulated me from going away.
Yeah.
So using those exercises, those advanced exercises were great. I saw instant relief. I saw instant results. And that's why I think coupling these practices with OA is so beneficial, because OA takes time. It takes dedication. If someone says, start breathing this way and tomorrow you'll be all fixed, don't listen to that instructor. They don't know what they're talking about. This takes time, effort, and energy. And that's the perspective OA gave me, is play the long game. These are great for instant fixes. They're great to make you feel good in the moment. But if you want to really cultivate the long-term overall health, that's where OA shines above any other practice so far.
I agree with you. And the way I look at it is through the classic metaphor. Specific breathwork techniques are like seeing the tree, and then learning about respiratory physiology, anatomy, biochemistry, all of these things that functional breathwork shows you. You start to see more of the forest. And I can't underemphasize how much understanding the way breathing works makes it more rewarding. Because again, I think that affords what you were talking about at the very beginning, is the intuition of the practice. And when you know how something works, you can intuit how to use it better in the moment. So I agree with you.
I think you hit the nail right on the head. OA provides that foundational understanding so that when you see someone who's like, oh, this is what this is called, you're like, well, actually, that's called that in another practice, but I see what you're trying to accomplish with the body. And, oh, okay, I know the mechanisms that you're engaging to aim for that effect. And I don't think I'm going to aim for that today. So I'm going to avoid that specific style because I don't want that outcome that I know the style will give me. But it's lovely to be able to hear someone be like, well, I've heard of this thing called, moon breathing. And I'm like, what? What's that? And then they explain to me like, oh, that's Tumo. Okay, someone's just tried to rebrand it. And okay, now I just made up that. I'm hoping no one has that. And they're like, that's my sacred thing. Okay, sorry. But everyone's got different names, like ladder breathing. Or if you want to be really cool, samurai breathing. Like, awesome. Okay. I personally like to call it samurai breathing because it sounds cooler, but it's just ladder breathing.
Hey, to get people into the practice, branding, naming, metaphors, all very, very important. I mean, the oxygen advantage, which we've talked about already at length in 20 minutes, is based on the Buteyko method, which, Patrick went to Russia to learn from Dr. Konstantin Buteyko, and this is breathwork that's much more of a clinical application for sleep apnea, snoring, anxiety, ADHD, and he started to host, these workshops in Ireland, and he was like, why are only moms of asthmatic children showing up to listen to me? Where are all the guys? And so he created the Oxygen Advantage and hoped to appeal to an audience that's interested in fitness and physical health and performance. And it was a great move because that's exactly who is beginning to catch on, and not just, people who like to hit the gym like me, but professional athletes now telling people their secret sauce is learning to calm themselves, learning to have the mental resilience through breathing. It's amazing.
I think the biggest aha moment I've had with any of the breathwork modalities I've studied was when I'm sitting listening to Patrick and he goes, respiratory fitness and physical fitness are not as interlinked as people think. You can have an Olympiad who has just garbage respiration, but they have the willpower and endurance to push their body to do amazing things. And if you combine that with proper foundational respiratory patterns and proper biomechanical movements, look what else they can do. It's fantastic. So when I learned that, like, wait, they're not interconnected, and seeing it time and time again that they're not interconnected, you have to work on them independently of each other. And that really changed the way I look at the world. And that's completely attributed to OA. That, you know, there's these people who can do these amazing physical things but can't hold their breath for 15 seconds.
This episode of the Better Yoga Podcast is brought to you by our friends at Banyan Botanicals. Use the code KARI15 for 15% off their amazing Ayurvedic products. That's KARI 15. Don't forget to use the link in our show notes. And our friends at Vibrant Health. Use the code BETTER_yoga for 20% off your next purchase of supplements and superfoods at vibranthealth.com.
Absolutely. I mean, picture, you know, a traditional ancient yogi in your mind, and probably the image that comes up is a quite austere looking man. Very, very skinny, a lot of meat on the bones, but can sit there and hold the breath for 5 minutes if he chose. And then we saw a study out of Japan last year, I can link it in the show notes, that had a crazy result of 90% of athletes don't have a properly recruited diaphragm, which would be characterized as dysfunctional breathing, right? Or adapted breathing patterns. And what that tells me isn't anything about their level of fitness. It tells me what a golden opportunity. All these people who are already having the mental strength, the mental endurance, the skill of the particular sport they play, add functional breathing, add healthy breathing, add good sleep on top of that. I can't even imagine the human potential that could come out of that.
And again, you've hit the nail on the head. For anyone listening, listen to what you said. It's on top of whatever else you're doing. Your breathwork practice is an in addition to practice. In addition to whatever you're doing, you're now doing this. And it's not an instead of practice. I hear people say, well, I'm going to do breathwork instead of. Do it in addition to. This is not a replacement training protocol. You do this as well. And if you do it regularly, like going to the gym, you will absolutely see results. Yes, of course you're going to plateau. That happens in every workout regime. You just have to keep working at it and keep going for it. But this is an in addition to process. On top of whatever you're doing, now we're also doing breath work. And
absolutely,
it's foundational for it.
So when you're working with clients, and I know you have a wide array of people who come to you, what would you say is the biggest benefit people get from training their breath with you, and particularly any that are backed by scientific research?
Well, I don't really like the let's align our chakras style of thought. I mean, it's got its place and here and there, but I like it to be foundational. I like to point to why this is working for you. And there aren't a lot of breathwork instructors. Like if you came to me on the first day, all we would work on is biomechanics. If you're the average person is taking around 20,000 breaths a day. And if you are not breathing correctly over 1 year, that's 7.3 million incorrect muscle movements. So I want to address that first. And I want to get your body moving correctly. And once you get your body moving correctly, you're going to help with digestion because the diaphragm's descending and aiding in digestion. Once you start breathing nasally in the correct spot with proper tongue posture, your mouth biome is going to recover because you're not breathing air and drying out the saliva over your teeth and causing cavities. It really is foundational and functional first off. And until we can address the foundation, all of the other stuff is fluff and irrelevant. And Say you have an autoimmune disease. Well, yeah, we're probably going to use Wim Hof because I don't know anything better that's great at pulling out global inflammation throughout the body. Let's do that. But that's only a touch throughout the day. For the rest of the day, you need to support your body with proper breathing, low, slow, and deep, or light, slow, and deep to, get the proper CO2 threshold. And they say, I love how it's oxygen advantage, but we're training people's CO2 threshold to get the better oxygen advantage.
It's CO2 advantage.
It is. And it's, without proper breath, you can't have proper posture. Without proper posture, you can't have proper breath. And then we're going to work your CO2 threshold to slow down your unconscious respiratory rate. Those three things are the most important three things to me about breath work. The rest we can build on top of that. But until those three foundational things are fixed, everything we do is not going to hit as strong as it can.
And in the perfect world with a compliant client who's doing the breath work at the frequency you tell them to and following your recommendations, love clients like that.
So just so everyone listening knows, we know when you don't do it. When you're like, oh, I'm doing it. And like, we watch you take a breath and you go, no, you're not. No, you're not. No, you're not. So we know when you're not doing it. So please just be honest and be like, no, I didn't do it. Because when you lie, I don't know why you lie. Just be honest. Just tell me you didn't do it. I don't care. I'm not going to judge you out loud, but we know. We can tell.
I always tell my clients, just like fostering a puppy, which Kari does a lot of. Goodbye is the goal. I don't want to be your breath coach forever. I want you to learn the skills, the techniques, the biomechanics to support yourself. I mean, you're welcome to keep paying me every month. Thank you.
Let's do it.
But really, goodbye is the goal. And just to backtrack. Okay, so you have this ideal client. They follow your protocol. They're doing it diligently. What do they notice improving in their life? Not necessarily just the unique maybe condition they came in for, but, is it sleep? Is it focus? Like, what would you say some of the biggest reported benefits are?
Well, I'm going to steal a metaphor one of my clients gave me as the biggest thing they noticed. And they said when they weren't paying attention to their breathing, we all have the same time, 24 hours in a day. But it seemed like the banks of the river of life were really close in. And if something went wrong, they reacted aggressively very quickly. So it felt like that water was flowing much faster than it needed to. That they were being bashed from one rock to the next. And they were just always in a state of reaction. And they have explained that conscious breath work just pushes out the banks of the river of life and slows down the speed with which the water flows and gives them just a little bit more maneuverability, space and time to react to what they can see coming now. So it's given them perspective and context that they don't always need to be rushing from one drama to another. And it basically slows down the speed with which life comes at them.
I'm totally stealing that metaphor.
Please do.
That's a really good one.
Yeah. When they explained it like that, I was like, oh yeah, I'm taking that. That's amazing. And it's the ability to slow down the perceived current of the river of life. Because we all know time's subjective. You go to a boring dinner, man, that hour is forever. You're having fun, it's like 2 seconds. All of that's tied intrinsically to your breath. And I think that ability, that just a little bit more space before the banks crash in on you and you feel like you're getting ripped down the rapids, is the biggest benefit I see to conscious breath work.
Love it. So we've talked about Wim Hof Method a few times. I just want to pick your brain a little bit more about this specific style of breath work because it is super popular and people love it. You are the first, if not one of the first American instructors to lead the method in the expeditions in Poland. Amazing. Freezing. Amazing. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that experience, but also what unique aspects of this method resonate most with practitioners?
Well, it's something about stepping into a known stressor. And by doing something, I'm not going to say, I know it is uncomfortable sometimes, the getting in the cold. And there's multitudinous health benefits to it. But the largest benefit I find from regular cold exposure is letting that stress hit you and slowing your breath down. Entering a sympathetic stressor that's meant to take your breath away, and then consciously relaxing the body and slowing your breath. To this day, I haven't found a better breathwork protocol that's more adept at exercising every nanometer of your cardiovascular system. During the overbreathing, you're getting rid of a bunch of CO2 and we're causing vasoconstriction. During the breath hold, we're holding a little more CO2 in our system and causing vasodilation. So you're actively exercising every nanometer of your cardiovascular system. And for me, as a type 1 diabetic, that's what my illness is destroying, is my cardiovascular system. So to actively be working against the illness I have, yeah, let's do that. Stepping into the cold to maintain the calm, it also makes me more insulin sensitive. So I don't have to take as much insulin as the next person who's a type 1 my size. That's a win. And I like it because I can see a result. I can say, oh, I felt this way before, and now I feel this way after. And a lot of the more gentle, passive practices, sometimes you don't feel what you want to feel. And that's unfortunate because they're just as impactful. But the draw I have for it is I can see. Like, I can put a pulse oximeter on my hand, and during the breath holds, I can hold longer each round because I'm globally holding less CO2 in my body, temporarily alkalizing the blood, reducing inflammation. I get my SpO2 down to like 30 sometimes.
All the nurses listening to this are fainting.
Well, I do it on purpose. I'm not just sitting there at home being like, oh, now it's 30. That would be terrifying. Freedivers, and there's a lot of people out there who are like, what are the drawbacks to this? Well, let's put it in perspective. There's not a lot of empirical studies that are going to tell you the effects of long breath holding and the drops of SpO2, like what that effect has on your body. What I can say, anecdotally, is that freedivers are some of the longest lived athletes on the planet. And while that may just be coincidence, because they're exercising, they're holding their breath all the time, I'd like to think there's something more there than that. That dropping my SpO2 to that level, 3 to 5 strong breath holds gets a little more EPO to be produced in the body, so that my hematocrit, as not an athlete, is at 50%. That's what Tour de France cyclists are looking for. I'm just doing that with breath holds. So that's a win on my part. My cardiovascular system's stronger, and I attribute a lot of that health and wellness to my continued practice of the Wim Hof Method. But I also contribute the staying power of the results I find to oxygen advantage. I did reduce the inflammation. I did reduce the pain I'm feeling. And I'm keeping it reduced by breathing biomechanically, functionally, and correctly for the other 23 hours and 40 minutes of the day. I am taping my mouth shut when I sleep at night so that I can make sure I'm breathing through my nose, which is my favorite form of training, by the way. Sleep training? Oh yeah, let's do that. Anything I can train while I'm not conscious, I am in. And
I had a participant in my OA instructor training a few months ago, and I was talking about mouth tape and using it as a way to train nasal breathing even when you're sleeping. And she made a very good distinction. She said, that's passive training. Mm-hmm. Putting tape across your lips, passive training. You want to actively train the muscles to breathe through the nose? Put a piece of paper, a smaller one, between your lips. Make sure it's not getting too wet because then you know your tongue's in the wrong place. And hold a little Post-it note while you're doing your email and you're training the muscles. And I just thought that was a really, really nice distinction.
And I would like to say out there, because I know some people freak out when we suggest mouth taping. I am assuming when I'm suggesting mouth tape for my clients that you do have proper tongue posture, that we have worked on your foundations and you don't have an aggressive sleep apnea, that we're going to work your Bolt score up to a point where it's safe for you to put mouth tape on. And if you're like, I don't know if I can do that, well, try putting mouth tape on actively about an hour before bed. And if you can breathe nasally for that hour, I'm pretty sure you're going to be fine sleeping with mouth tape on. The only caveat I have for mouth tape is during the first 2 weeks, you might find your CO2 threshold. Nobody likes finding their CO2 threshold because that bypasses the amygdala and you get a mainline shot of adrenaline and fear. I tell clients, I hope that doesn't happen, but if you do, good job. You're pushing it forward. And that's the unfortunate side of foundational breath work is I'm going to ask you to look for your CO2 threshold. And when you find it, it is not a comfortable experience.
For those who have not experienced finding their CO2 threshold, what does that feel like in the body? How would you describe that?
I don't know if I could describe it with words so much as what your body does is a better descriptor. If you find your CO2 threshold, you go from here to real fast. Heart rate's racing and you're just, what the heck was that? That is your CO2 threshold. It just a shot of anxiety and stress because your brain says, breathe now. And you take that gaspy breath in.
That feels like you're suffocating.
Yeah, that's it. And it's that stress. It used to be something I turned away from. And now it's a game. Like, let's look for that. How far, where is that at now? Because that's a great indicator for me in that day of where I'm at. So, I mean, some days I can hold my breath for 4 minutes and it's not an issue. Other days, 30 seconds is an impossibility and I can't even make it that long. And the joy with breath work is that's letting me know where my body's at rather than me trying to force an outcome. So if I can hit a 4-minute breath hold, yeah, let's talk about heavy stuff today. I can handle that. But if I'm not able to go for 30 seconds, maybe tomorrow would be a better day if I can.
Mm-hmm. And the way you're describing Wim Hof, it reminds me of a metaphor I heard Andy Galpin use before, which is describing the allostatic load or sort of your stress threshold as a bucket. So you have a stress bucket. And it sounds like what you're saying is your practice with the Wim Hof method makes your bucket bigger. You
Absolutely.
now have a different relationship to hormetic stress, so beneficial stress. And then how I would understand it is the oxygen advantage practices or just functional breathing practices give you a little bit more control as to how fast your bucket can fill or how much your bucket can fill in general.
Absolutely. They both reinforce each other. That's one of the things I love. New Wim Hof Method instructors or new oxygen advantage instructors are like, they don't work together. And I'm like, they're perfectly coordinated.
Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, they so support each other in every way that you need to be supported. They're symbiotic together. Take your breath to the gym and then work on the foundation for the rest of the day. And not only do I have a bigger bucket, but it gives me the ability to pour it out throughout the day by checking in. And it doesn't fill up nearly as fast or as I find myself having less and less moments of, ah! I mean, they're still there. I've got 3 kids. So I'd like to say that son's practicing.
Your bucket's full.
My bucket's full. It's there. It spills out sometimes, but I've got a little more influence over it. I don't like the word control. I like the word influence. Because if you say control, people will be like, this will work every time. No, but you can influence a lot. And the stress bucket is just, I mean, am I allowed to swear?
Yeah.
Okay, so you say stress bucket. I call it the bucket of fuckets. And by practicing breath work, I have an abundance of fuckets in my bucket now. Whereas before, I only had 2 or 3 throughout the day. But now it's like, this happened. Fuck it. All right. And I just, I can willy-nilly throw them out. and not get stressed over all these little things. So you call it the stress bucket. I call it the fuck it bucket. And I've got so many more fuckets to throw out throughout the day because of conscious breath work.
Yeah, once again, names are important. Yours will be infinitely more marketable than mine. So I just want to go back to one more thing about Wim Hof Method. I'm not a Wim Hof instructor. I have been fortunate to practice it through amazing instructors like yourself. And a part of the practice is not just breathing in a certain stressful way, but the cold exposure. And
Absolutely.
I know you have a very diligent cold exposure practice. It's helped you with pain and mental strength. Can you tell us a bit more about, one, the Wim Hof Method's approach to cold exposure, what that entails, and then also your personal approach and practice, maybe getting into, at the end, if I'm a newbie for cold exposure, where should I start? So that was 3 questions.
We'll see how we can hit them. Now, for my cold exposure, I like it for the mental benefits. And it helps me be in less pain because of the anti-inflammatory benefits of taking an ice bath, which athletes have known for years. They just take it and their whole body's right here. And they're like, I'm in the ice, getting better. But, open your hands, drop your shoulders, relax, slow your breath down. Parasympathetic breath and a sympathetic experience. And for a new person, if I say, hey, everybody, let's take an ice bath, I can almost guarantee everyone is imagining themselves sitting in a 33-degree ice bath being like, this is cold and I hate it. Why does it have to be that cold? Anything less than 65 degrees Fahrenheit counts as cold exposure. You can take a cold shower. You can do your hands. You can do your feet. Whatever you're willing to do, as long as it's a little uncomfortable, thumbs up. You're doing great. You don't have to spend more than 2 or 3 minutes in the ice bath. I wouldn't let people spend more than 2 minutes on their first time. Get out, enjoy it. It doesn't need to be like, I'm going to endure it. And for any newbies out there, ice baths is not about enduring it. It's about surrendering to the experience, listening to your body, and getting out when it's time. So start with your hands, start with your feet, start with a cold shower. Just start with whatever you're willing to attempt. And if one day you're like, you know what, I want to do a 33-degree ice bath with the ice cubes and everything, come on by. We'll do that. But it doesn't have to be that. You don't have to be Wim. You don't have to be me. Find the level of cold for you that's just uncomfortable enough that you're willing to tolerate. And anything colder than 65, most people's water temperature in the winter is about 50 degrees. That counts. Slow your breath down. In 4, out 6 through the nose. Relax the body. Or don't relax. Do the hokey pokey. You don't have to get your head under the water. Get your shoulders. Get your arms. Get your legs. But whatever you're willing to do, that's enough for now. And if you're comparing yourself to Wim, congratulations, you've already failed. You're trying to make a comparison against someone who has been doing this now for over 30 years. You're competing with that guy. Your first ice bath, you're picking the dude with 3 decades experience to compare yourself to. That's going to go well. So get out when it's time to get out. And don't say, is that enough? Congratulations, and you did it. It's enough that you even got in. If you get in and get out and you're like, well, fuck, that was cold. You just did an ice bath. Maybe not for as long as you'd like, but you did it.
I like that approach.
Yeah.
I'm somebody who definitely prefers not a 33-degree ice bath, though I have dabbled when I'm fortunate enough that part of my family lives in Austria, and that beautiful alpine climate comes with a lot of fun practices that have been cultural for Austrians for hundreds and hundreds of years. And there are ponds that are basically frozen, except people have chunked out a little entry point. And those are sensational. And I do that one time per year to say I did it.
Well done.
Other than that, 60, 50 degrees, somewhere in there, that's my speed.
Well, there's a lot of people miss one of the most important things Wim says over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Do not force anything. That means don't force the ice bath at a temperature that you don't want to get into. Don't force a specific breathing rhythm. Don't force an emotion or a sensation. The goal is to feel better with the emphasis on feel, not better. So he says it all the time. Don't force anything. And they're like, I was in there for 10 minutes. And he goes, okay. That seems forced. It's like, oh, I was just there. And at the end, they're having an after drop and they're shaking. And it's like, you missed the point. So we don't have to force anything. It's whatever you're willing to do to step into that discomfort, to step into that hermetic stress, so that you're willing to do it again. And then again and again and again. And that's my favorite part about it is I'm not trying to force anyone to do anything. You can get in the ice bath as much or as little as you'd like, and I'll help you through either way.
Yeah, something I really appreciate about your teaching, whether it's during ice baths or during breath work, is you really encourage people to just let go of the ego. Like, who cares how long you can hold your breath for? Who cares how cold your ice bath is? Like, you're here, you're doing it. Do it how it's right for your body, and that's the success. And I think it's wise teaching.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I know that you have been playing with a new breathwork ratio.
Yes.
Sort of recipe you've been concocting. Tell us about this practice.
So it's 8-5-12-5. In for 8, hold for 5, out for 12, hold for 5. It's a 30-second breath. 2 breaths per minute. And if done gently, can be a form of breathe light. You're absolutely going to be holding more CO2 in your system. So if you're creative and you've got writer's block or a creative block, it can help get a little more oxygenation to the brain. If you're in pain, it can help get better blood flow to your body because you're engaging in that vasodilation. But all in all, I found 4 of those breaths, 2 minutes of this exercise is enough to help reset people's mindsets and give them the power to influence whatever's been stimulating them throughout the day. But I've been looking all over to see if 8-5-12-5 has been anywhere else, and I can't find it. So if anyone out there has any familiarity with that, please let me know. But there's something spectacular about the holds that if you're just doing in 8, out 12, which is a parasympathetic breath, is a state of constant movement and motion for the body. Adding the holds gives it just a little bit of a break to, come to terms and adapt to how you're breathing. And I've actually been finding more success with 8-5-12-5 than for my clients than just 8-12 alone. So adding in 10 seconds worth of holds, it's more accessible to people. I have young kids with asthma who are able to do this breath almost right away. People with COPD and emphysema, after a couple sessions, can hit this breath right away. And I love how effective and simple it is. So
you sent me the recording to try out, and I've been doing it before my morning meditation, and it has been such a lovely segue into my meditative breath, which is uncontrolled, unmediated. And I agree with what you're saying. It puts me in this state of ease. And I think maybe for beginners, they're thinking, how am I ever going to breathe for that long? One, remember, you can always shorten ratios, but I've found that something about that ratio is really nice and does not feel strained. Even, for example, if I'm in the luteal phase of my menstrual cycle where I'm less tolerant to CO2 and I have a little bit more air hunger, I find that it's still pretty comfortable. And I'll link your recording in our show notes.
Absolutely.
So people can give it a try. But
use it anywhere. I mean, if my brain is spinning and I need to calm down, this is what I've been doing. And for me, it's the count. I'm counting to myself, in for 8, hold for 5, out for 12, hold for 5. So my prefrontal cortex is distracted. I've given that spinning brain a task. And because those numbers they're not super different, but they're different enough that I have to be mentally engaged. And then my body can just relax and let go because the brain has been given a task that it has to focus on.
Yeah, harder to be distracted with that count. Cool. Well, I'll put it in the show notes, and I would love for people to give that a try. All right. So we always end the pod asking the same question. And we would love to know, if you weren't doing this, what path would you be pursuing? What would you be doing?
Oh, that's easy. I'd either still be bartending, which I can't do after my last injury. Loud music from my left-hand side causes me to collapse. That's just awesome when you're in a bar. But my master's degree is in audio engineering, and I absolutely love being a sound designer and a sound engineer. So I'd probably still be working in theater and film. 18-hour days, touring with people on the road, 300 days a year, totally healthy, totally getting the health care I need. Stepping into an early grave because I'm always angry and stressed out of the job I've got and thinking that's totally normal. But if I wasn't in breathwork, I'd probably still either be bartending or just on tour like mad, because that's how we make money in the theater world, is we tour. And I like having this calmer, more relaxed, serene life I get to participate in.
I'm really glad you teach breathwork and that you're not on the road, personally, selfishly. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us on the Better Yoga podcast, Chuck. Hopefully we'll have you back again many times.
Thank you so much. It was my privilege and pleasure.
We hope you enjoyed today's show. Don't forget to check out our 2-week free trial for unlimited yoga, breathwork, and Ayurveda on betteryoga.net.